If you could, please. Are we live now? Thank you. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order of Beaumont City Council, regular council meeting on Tuesday, March 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. As we begin all meetings, apparently it's Pi Day today, but not the good stuff. It's the Greek number thing. So he gets his own day for some reason. So don't understand why, but anyhow, it's Pi Day. Welcome to Pi Day. Land acknowledgement, we begin our meeting all at the same time with land acknowledgement. We're pleased to be here today on traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. As we gather here in the traditional territory of Treaty 6, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibility to protect and honor all of life. This evening, we have 3 proclamations this evening, starting off with Earth Hour, March 25th, 2023, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Whereas our nation's use of energy continues to increase, resulting in detrimental effects on the world's climate, and whereas it estimated that turning on non-essential lights out in Canada for 1 hour could save as much as 15% of energy consumed on an average Saturday night. And whereas energy saving will reduce carbon emissions into our air, preserve the natural resources used to produce this energy, set a positive precedent for all the rest of the nation, and result in ongoing reduced costs for the community, taxpayers, and businesses of the city of Beaumont. And whereas participation in Earth Hour 2023 will provide the residents of the city of Beaumont with insight into the impact of lights on energy consumption and raise community awareness on the need to conserve energy wherever possible. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 25th, 2023 as Earth Hour in the city of Beaumont, dated 14th of March, 2023. International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination, March 21st, 2023. Whereas the city of Beaumont is committed to the belief that equal opportunity and equitable treatment should exist for all people. And whereas every resident of the city of Beaumont has the right to realize his or her potential, regardless of race, color, cultural, or ethnic origin, and live at all times in conditions of dignity, respect, and peace. And whereas in 1966, the General Assembly of the United Nations designated March 21st as International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And whereas elimination of racism and racial discrimination can be accomplished through mutual understanding, acceptance, and respect for the dignity of all people and the rights of all people. And whereas elimination of racism and racial discrimination is a social and moral responsibility of each person. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 21st, 2023 as International Day Elimination of Racial Discrimination in the city of Beaumont, dated 14th of March, 2023. And lastly, World Down Syndrome Day, March 21st, 2023. Whereas in December 2011, the General Assembly of the United Nations designated March 21st as World Down Syndrome Day. And whereas approximately 1 in every 750 babies born in Canada today has Down syndrome, and an estimated 45,000 Canadians living with Down syndrome. And whereas research and early intervention are dramatically improve the lifespan and potential of those people who are affected by Down syndrome, more investigation is needed into the causes and treatment of Down syndrome. And whereas possessing a wide range of abilities, people with Down syndrome are active participants in educational, occupational, social, and recreational activities in Alberta's communities. And whereas people with Down syndrome have tremendous potential to live full and fulfilling lives as contributing members of the community. And whereas the city of Beaumont values people with Down syndrome and their families and supports the well-being of all individuals with Down syndrome and their ability to function as fully accepted members of society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 21st, 2023 as World Down Syndrome Day in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 14th of March, 2023. Just give me 1 second. All right. Next on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. Ms. Winter, are there any amendments to the adoption of the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any additions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. Member of Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as presented? Councillor Miller.
Sure, I move that the March 14th, 2023 council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none from Council. Council, would you please vote on the motion before you? Hang on a second. There we go. Your light should be on now. Thank you, council. That carries unanimously. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. This evening, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. On the screen in front of us, if you in a moment, please. The member of council willing to move the consent agenda as presented. Councilor Barnhart. Kathy?
I'd be pleased to do that, Mayor. I move that the following items. Sorry, the top of that motion is up. That council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting, February 28th, 2023. Item 6C, 2022 annual environments master plan update. Item 6D, revised council policy number 1, public participation policy. And item 6E, recommendation for the public member appointment to the Yellowhead Regional Library Executive Committee.
Thank you, councilor. Council, discussion on the motion on the consent agenda. Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the consent agenda as presented? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Moving on with our agenda, open forum. Ms. Winter, do we have anybody in open forum this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any open forward presentations this evening.
Thank you. On to our first item of business, 6A, 2022 year-end financial report. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you're presenting this evening. And with that, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeBlanco, the director of finance for the city. This evening, I'll be presenting the preliminary financial results for the 2022 budget year. The information is presented in advance of the financial statement audit. This audit commences over the next few weeks, so the values, including any surplus or deficit, may change due to adjustments made as part of the year-end process or as recommended by the city's external auditor. The audited statements will be presented in April and under the MGA must be made public by May 1st. So first off, we'll take a peek at attachment 1, looking at the municipal operating or tax levy funded budget. This is page 2 of the attachment and is also page 14 of the agenda package. The 2022 municipal operating budget had a 2.4% increase in the tax levy from the prior year, 2021. And this revenue funds all municipal operations for the city with the exception of utilities, which, as we know, have their own operating budget. Other revenue streams outside of taxes that contribute to this budget include things like sales and user charges, government transfers, and rental. So when we look at page 14 and look at overall revenue, what we see is the city's recognized approximately 800,000 of additional revenue over the budgeted amount. And this can be attributed to several areas, but is most notably increases in sales and user charges, government transfers, as well as investment income. These increases have been partially offset by some reductions or under budget amounts for rental revenue, as well as licenses, permits, and fines. The additional sales and user charge revenue is specifically tied to increased development activity within the planning and development department, as well as things like increased membership and drop in revenue at the recreation center. We look down at operating expenses. The city's municipal operations exceeded the budgeted operating expenses by 1.7 million approximately. And at a high level, these increased expenses are driven from inflation. However, there are definitely some specific drivers where additional spending was required. Additional operating expenses specifically for the recreation department were for contracted services to provide additional events. Security is required in the first quarter at the rec center, as well as some other required services to do with kind of this first full year of operations at the rec center and increased usage of recreation facilities as a whole. The city saw increased fuel costs for fleet, janitorial costs, as well as facility repairs and maintenance kind of in the city's facility service area. And this has contributed to additional expenditures within the infrastructure department. Further to this, increasing energy prices have resulted in additional 500,000 approximately in utility expense, including heat and power at city facilities. Much of these costs pertain to once again, having the first full year of normal operations at the rec center and for items to address things like HVAC, door operations, as well as some leaks within the facility. In addition to that, additional consulting services have been required to aid in strategies to improve the city's profile within the region, as well as additional personnel to meet the demands of a growing organization, particularly in people services. Items listed off that are expected to be ongoing into the 2023 budget year. They have been forecasted. They were included in the proposed 2023 budget. And you would see those as costs to maintain services. These additional operating expenses contribute to what we see as a operating deficit of approximately $800,000. The next level below expenses are transfers. Transfers, these things are budgeted to fund things like one-time projects, phase in of things like transit, and the stage and cash flows and the cost of work completed on these type of things will determine the amount ultimately transferred from reserves. Transfers from reserves amount to 1.4 million, and contributions to said reserves are approximately 2.7 million, specifically to capital reserves. Transfers to and from the utility budget and capital budgets have been made just as forecasted. These net transfers will contribute a small amount, $36,000 towards this operating deficit. So just to summarize, overall, the 2022 municipal operating budget is currently in a deficit position of approximately $800,000. On to the utility operating budget, which is page 15 of the agenda package. The city saw utility revenue come in approximately $500,000 below the forecasted budget. And rationale for that is as work from home policies and things like online learning requirements for schools returned to normal over the course of 2022. Of course, less residents were spending time in their homes. What we saw is a 5% decrease in average water consumption as well as wastewater usage when compared to the prior year and compared to budget. This decrease in revenue is much offset by the reduced costs that we get from the commissions for purchasing water as well as processing wastewater. So that decrease in revenue gets offset directly. Utilities such as solid waste and stormwater drainage saw very small surpluses, less than 100,000 for each of those. And overall, the utility budgets saw a very small net deficit of $14,000, which is very close to break even. And this is, of course, after the budgeted reserve transfer of $1.2 million to the utility reserve. Following the audit, administration will recommend that any deficit in the utility operating budget be covered from a draw on reserve. As like I mentioned before, if there's an adjustment that would turn that $14,000 to the positive, that amount would then be contributed to the utility reserve. Included as well in the utility operating budget are reserve transfers for one-time projects. These include the utility master plan, stormwater management master plan, and watershed studies. Carry forward of these amounts has been requested in attachment 2. It's anticipated that each of these projects would be completed around Q2 2023. Next on to capital, which is page 3 of the attachment 1 and 16 of the agenda package. As of December 31st year end, 13 million of the approved budget had been spent, and of the approximately 37% that remains unspent at year end, 6.2 million, which is around 30%, has been requested as a carry forward to complete these projects in 2023. Approximately 1.4, so that's the delta there, which is 7%, is the unspent amount, and this would either represent savings on programs or we had mentioned some cancellations at Q3 time. Notable growth projects that were completed and are in use within the year include the Four Seasons multi-use fields and trails and the West Rec site. The 2023 capital budget, as you can see, is a large one here. Includes the Beaumont Innovation Park, specifically funding allocated for the design and engineering of deep utilities. The work didn't commence in the year, but the budgeted funds are being requested to be carried forward to the following year. And as mentioned before, savings realized were most notably on renewal programs. And as all of these renewal programs are funded from the city's reserves, those dollars just remain in the reserves to fund future renewal. Next page, which is page 17, specifically on reserved. We've kind of mentioned the transfers before, but I'll go over them again and how they pertain to the opening and closing balances of the reserves. Operating budgets require draws of 1.4 million, and this is approximately $400,000 under the budgeted amount. This decrease, once again, is just driven from the timing of completion of these projects. If a project is 50%, we're not going to draw the whole amount. We're going to draw the amount that was spent. Funds for many of these projects are being requested to be carried forward to 2023. Once again, that is included as attachment 2. From a capital reserve perspective, 4.4 of the budgeted 4.6 was required to fund capital renewal. And as mentioned in their respective sections, in the operating budgets, contributions between both the municipal operating and utility operating totaled 3.8 million. Overall, what we see is an anticipated closing balance for all reserves being approximately $500,000 higher than what we had forecast from the 2022 budget. Council will note that we have some icons on the balances of each of the reserves, and one of them that is sitting at a balance which is below what is set as optimal within the council policies economic development reserve. The threshold set out is $1 million. For this balance, there's no planned draws in the 2023 proposed budget, so there isn't an immediate impact of that. But what will happen is, as we finish off the audit, administration will look at all balance of reserves, and we may recommend a reallocation to top up anything that's underfunded. So that's the one that we see there that's underfunded. Lastly, budget carry forwards, which is attachment 2. This provides a list of both operating and capital projects that administration is recommending be carried forward in order for these projects to be completed. The approved and interim 2023 budgets would need to be amended by these outstanding amounts for administration to continue the work. Approving these amendments won't have any impact on the 2023 property tax levy, as each of them are funded from a one-time funding source, like a reserve or a grant. Following completion of the audit, once again, administration will recommend a draw from reserve to balance the operating budgets. In the case that we see a surplus, more likely in the utility budget, the recommendation would be to transfer that surplus to the utility reserve. This concludes the presentation this evening. I'll turn the floor back over to council, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Blanco, appreciate that. Questions from council before I ask for a motion to reset the report as received information. Also the carry forward identification for attachment 2. We'll move that in a few minutes here. So I'll start with Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilman Muckhoff-Swain. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, just a quick comment for administration today around the reserves, and a thank you for putting those icons in there. It's just a real quick, easy way to check the reserves and you know, see the yellow one, get an explanation, and then we don't have to go back and forwards between the policy. And that also is just a very easy visual thing. So that's the main one for me. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Councilor Newkirk. Councilman Muckhoff-Swain, you have the floor. Sam, followed by Councilor Barnhart. Sam, go ahead.
You bet. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, off the top, first off, congrats on you know, coming incredibly close to the budgeted piece. And I understand that's a hard thing to do every year, but especially 2022 with trying to manage pandemic and inflation, everything like that. So, you know, make sure you hats off to the team for coming in so close to our target there. And so there's that. First question I had, just as it relates from on the, we talked about the reserves, and obviously we're going to go straight to the one that is yellow. Can you just confirm that the 685 there, that was to help fund for Innovation Park, where we paid for that from reserves, the debt, is that correct?
Sure. Thanks for the question through the mayor to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain. Yes, that's specifically for debt servicing for the Innovation Park. And
then you followed that up by saying we don't anticipate doing that in 2023. We'll get into that into budget coming up in a little bit, but I just wanted to stress that part. So thanks for going through that. I did have a question just out of curiosity, mainly because I just don't understand how this works. But in the year-end financial report, you talk about you show out the investment income. You know, we budgeted 400,000, you hit 728,000. So that just, can you just give me an overview of how that works? And don't go into your investment strategy, but just like just I mean, obviously that's, I look down the variance numbers, I see 82%, I get excited. So just curious, what do you attribute that to?
Sure. Once again, thanks for the question. So the variance amount there is specifically tied to interest rates. We've seen interest rates go up throughout the year. We try to forecast conservatively as of last year on what we feel like our cash balances are and what interest rates are and what our cash balances, how they're tied to interest rates. What we saw is a good thing from an interest rate perspective for us. A lot of people may feel that interest rates going up are not a positive thing, but in the impact of our reserve balances in the city's treasury, they are.
Okay, oh, that's good to know. Thank you. The last question, feel free to punt this one. This may be unfair. On the capital side of things, we provided, a budget of just over $80,000 for the 510 preliminary design piece. I've missed a few meetings, so I may have missed this one, but I don't recall seeing anything back on that. So it says that we've spent, 77,000. So presumably we went through that. Can anyone just give an update on where that's at? And if we need to push that's fine. I was just curious on that one.
I don't have a specific update, but if any of my
I can
colleagues want to.
ask unless.
The mayor to Councillor Unkoff Swain. I believe that report is done, and I don't think it has been reported back to council, but if so desired, we can definitely provide an update.
Yeah, I think so. And I recognize we've got a million things that we need to try to do, and our administration, well, some people in administration might not think it's top priority of 510. We get asked about all the time. Obviously, the further west you go, it's crumbling around those corners, and I know that's the county, and they're trying to manage that. But we spent the money. I would appreciate an update when appropriate. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll echo my colleagues' comments about the work that's been done here to stay, as close as you have to the budget, which is a tough job. I know that that is a fact. Just looking at some of the detail, one of the variances that jumped out at me was the one in community and social development. And I saw explanations for some of the variances, but I didn't see one for that, probably because it's under 10%, and I appreciate that. But I just wonder, $253,000 is a pretty significant amount in the community and social development world. So I'm just wondering if there's any explanation as to, I think I know where some of the expenses didn't occur, but is there any information you can share on that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, I'm just pulling up a more detailed report I have. I can speak that some of that variance is grants that just the timing didn't occur within the year, things like the food bank grant, just with, I can't speak to the specifics of it, but the funds weren't released within 2022. Some of it has to do with just new personnel that I believe were funded in the 2022 budget that weren't filled until mid-year. And I can't speak on specific other things, but yeah, that would be.
So those are two ones that I was thinking of. And I was just wondering what is the process on that, if we know something like that is happening mid-year, is that something that could come back to council and have some adjustments made if we know some of the changes? I mean, the inclusion coordinator, I think, was one of them where we weren't able to find someone, but it's just an area that we need so much work done in. To see that money not be spent just kind of hurts me to see that. So I'm just wondering if there's, again, that's maybe a comment for Mr. Schwartz, and just in terms of being able to reallocate some of those dollars, if we can, to consulting fees or something to help with the issues.
CEO Schwartz.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. In fact, we did that with the coordinator, and that's how we're getting the framework done. So we took the excess that wasn't paid in wages and hired a contractor to put together the EDI framework.
Okay.
So we rarely run it, but it's a good suggestion, and that's something we can consider. We rarely run into where it takes so long, and then we do incur costs for recruiting and so on and so forth. So we kind of use it as a wash. By the end of the year, it discounts our wages by, probably 3% in the overall budget. But if we saw something that looks like it's going to be a while and it's not going to be funded in that year, then that's something we can consider for sure. But we tried really hard on that one, as you know, and I just couldn't find the right person.
The framework coordination, that grant, would that have come out of that line item, or is that coming out of the consulting budget in the CAO's office?
No, that would be coming out of the wages from the EDI coordinator.
Oh, so that would come out of the community and social development?
Yes.
Yeah, it would. So
Yeah.
that would have been spent. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. One last thing, if I may, Mayor, is just
Please.
in the report itself, it does mention that there doesn't look like there's any communication to the public on this one. I just wondered if I read that right. There's no public engagement at all on this piece.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councilor Barnard. For this particular report, there's no engagement. For the actual audited financial statements, which are the final document that summarize the financial operations of the year, those then get posted to the public.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, Ms. Winter, I believe we can probably do both motions together and have be moved as together and voted on together. Thank you. Is there a member of council willing to move the motions on recommendations for information and the budget carry forward? Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
I move that the March 14th, 2023 report, 2022 year-end financial report be received as information, and that the 2022 to the 2023 budget carry forward as identified in attachment 2 of the March 14th, 2023 report be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion from council. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Blanco, for your report. Much appreciated. Next on our agenda is 6B, options for snow removal at the West Recreation Site Dog Park. I believe, Bryce, you'll be speaking. You haven't met before, so Bryce, welcome to council. Please sit down and introduce yourself and state your position with the city and begin your presentation when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Bryce Castantini. I'm the manager of Parks, Roads and Drainage at the City of Beaumont. Presenting the report on the options for snow removal at the West Recreation Dog Park site. A bit of background that at the November 1st, 22 council meeting, concerns were raised over the current service level at the West Recreation Site Dog Park during the winter months. The West Recreation Site Dog Park consists of 3 fenced areas with approximately 592 linear meters of granular limestone pathway. A little bit of context around that those pathways run through the first 2 of those 3 dog parks. The back 8 acres of a dog park is completely grassed area. The city does not currently conduct any snow removal, snow clearing or removal activities during the winter months at this dog park within the fence line, with the exception of clearing the parking lot, that's in Schedule B6 of our service level requirements, and clearing the dog park entrance gates of fresh snow, ensuring the gates are functional. That's a part of Schedule D of our service level commitments. As a part of this report, the administration, we reached out to 8 municipalities across Alberta to inquire on pathway maintenance practices for unpaved trails during the winter months, as well as how they manage their dog park facilities. Municipalities that were contacted include City of Edmonton, City of St. Albert, City of Leduc, City of Lethbridge, City of Red Deer, City of Lacombe, Town of Sylvan Lake, and the Town of Banff. All municipalities indicated they do not maintain unpaved pathways. They leave them in their natural state, and in their respective off-leash areas, pathways are only maintained if paved trails are present. I just want to clarify a little bit of context that there is a little bit of discrepancy around a dog park and an off-leash area. So an off-leash area is something that's open to the public and may have a trail paved through it, but it's not a dedicated fenced off-leash dog park. Administration considered various approaches to improving the winter access to the dog park while developing options for council consideration. These include the following. So we considered blading and plowing the trails. This does not improve the base layer. This would involve letting the snowfall accumulation freeze up. It usually takes around Christmas before we get weather cold enough where we could have a base pack that's frozen to sustain the weight of the equipment necessary to plow the trails. This would offer improved access, but it doesn't guarantee the service all winter long. So we would only be able to blade periodically once the conditions are adequate. Another consideration was rock chips and salt application. Rock chips were a consideration within a dog park as they do not affect a dog's paws, and it can lead to improved footing. But it was determined that that was not a viable solution, as we don't have a mechanism for picking up the rock chips at the end of the season. The rock chips in the sand would then deteriorate the limestone pathway, causing in a quicker deterioration of the asset than expected. Salt obviously was a consideration, but it was not a viable solution, as the irritation to dogs' paws is too high of a risk. Trail grooming, that was another consideration that we had. Trail grooming can be undertaken with a variety of different equipment. This would allow for a hard packed surface for improved access. We would still recommend that adequate condition appropriate footwear be used, and the use of cleats would be highly recommended. This would develop a solid base layer and will allow operations to continue maintenance through spring without significant impacts. There are several styles of groomer to choose from. This includes a drum style groomer that could be towed behind a piece of equipment. The drum style groomer allows for maintenance with larger accumulations of snow. There is also a pull behind teeth groomer, which is more of a finishing groomer, something that you would see in ski trails, that they would finish off the ski trails. And that would allow for better footing. Sorry. Other possible solutions that we evaluated included blowing or power brushing the pathways. This was considered a non-viable option, as we would have to clear down to the natural pathway. The natural pathway would not absorb water in the winter, and during the freeze-thaw cycle, the natural pathway would turn to ice, and we would have a decreased footing situation. Included below is a summary of 2 viable options to improve winter access for dog park users at the West Recreation Dog Park site, as well as financial and other implications. So I'll read through the options 1, then 2. Option number 1 was blading and ploughing. So to utilize existing equipment, including a rubber tire utility terrain vehicle equipped with a blade attachment. This option would involve allowing the snow to accumulate and freeze, creating a solid base layer to handle the weight of the equipment before ploughing. Ploughing would be completed with the blade elevated above grade, providing a maintained and smooth surface, allowing a solid base of snowpack to remain on the pathway. The cost of this option would be $10,000 per annum in operating costs. The impact: blading would be conducted following all existing service level commitments for snow clearing and removal. Ploughing would be weather dependent and would not be completed until snow accumulation was adequate in depth and frozen enough to support snowpack on the pathway surface. This could result in pathways not being cleared for much of the season and restricting user access. Implementing this option will not result in regular scheduled clearing of the pathways. Conditions of the snowpack would need to be achieved prior to ploughing. Option 2, trail grooming. This option includes purchasing and operation of a pull behind drum style groomer. To groom the trails, the drum style groomer will be connected to a suitable powered unit capable of pulling in the deep snow without creating large ruts. A suitable unit in the city fleet would require an upgrade from rubber tires to rubber tracks to allow accessibility and to minimize damage to underlying trails and landscaping. A suitable unit would pull the groomer across the pathways to pack the snow down. The cost of this option, the equipment purchase, including the groomer and tracks, is a $17,000 one-time purchase with ongoing operational costs of $7,500 per annum. The impact of this option trail grooming would be conducted following all existing service levels for snow clearing and removal. Users of the dog park could expect a groomed trail within the dog park. Confines that would require adequate footwear. Cleats would still be recommended, as a pathway surface would be packed with snow. There is a potential during warm weather that groomed trails could become icy due to melt along the pathway. Administration also considered contracting grooming services to an outside service provider. However, following discussions with multiple snow clearing service providers, it was discovered that contractors lack the necessary equipment to achieve the desired results. Therefore, there would be no cost savings in having an outside service provider conduct this work versus the purchase and operation of this equipment internally. As a result of the above review, it has been determined that the most effective solution to improving winter access in the dog park would be to groom pathways, that is option 2, and blading and ploughing can be completed as indicated above. However, this may not allow for accessibility through the winter season that meets the needs of the dog park users. That concludes my report, and I'll be able to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Bryce. Much appreciated. If you get your last name, sorry, I'll just call you Bryce if you don't mind.
That's
Thanks for your presentation and the information provided. At this point, open up to members of council for questions on the report. We'll start with Councilor Swain. Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bryce, for coming in the report. Nice to hear a different accent here in the room. It'll be not the right one, but that's okay. We'll get there. Yeah, so thanks to the report. I know when we asked this, the information, I really appreciate the thoroughness that the team went through to look into this and talk to the other municipalities, etc. So me personally, leaning towards option 2, the one thing that I have a concern about, and I'm not sure that you can solve it, but the first bullet point is crucial. There is trail grooming to be conducted following all existing service level commitments, right? And so obviously the priority is 50th Street, and it works its way down from there. And I'd hate to purchase this nice looking equipment and for it to kind of sit out there because we never got a chance to do it. So tip my hand to where our motion will be coming. But for me, that I think we could just evaluate that and see how that goes. I mean, this year there was still a lot of folks out at the dog park, and they really appreciated that. So thanks for the report. A couple of questions that I had that are loosely connected to this. That while I got you, I'll dive into it. So that you talked about kind of the 3 different dog parks, right? The one that's we were just going to seed and just kind of let it come up the 8 acres or whatever that is. Do we expect a time on when that's going to be open? I assume that takes, I don't know how long it takes for grass to grow in this country, but I assume it takes more than 1 year. So do we know if that's going to be open this year, or where do we think that might be?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff Swain, we expect that dog park to be open in 2024. A full summer should see that grass grow quite adequately. We'll find it spread quite well with the heat of the summer and rain. If we're at the grace of weather, as most farmers are in this area of the world, but we expect it to be adequately grass to be open in 2024.
Great. Yeah, I think the only other question I had as I was thinking through, I was looking at the picture, and again, I'm the last guy to understand how these tools work, but we get a lot of asks from our community around cross-country skiing and that sort of stuff. Is there a way that something like this could help, plow the tracks, if that's the right terminology? I'm just curious, if we're going to spend some money on some equipment, is there a way to look at, dual purpose type thing?
Thank you for the follow-up question. The reason the drum groomer was so highly sought after as an option was because it has the duality. So there is option to use that piece of equipment further down the line. We don't want to acquire a piece of equipment that we use once every month or once a week. We want to use it as much as possible and get the absolute most out of it. So it does have the capability to perform some maintenance of a cross-country ski trail should it be required.
Perfect. And then I'll skip over you to Mr. DeBlanco, just in terms of process question. Like here, we're looking at $17,000 in capital. If a motion was to be made, could we make an off-cycle capital ask and get that funded? If the votes were there, I don't want to wait till next budget, and then by next budget it's too late to order that piece of equipment, and then we lose another year. So could you just help? Can we make an off-cycle request if there were the votes?
Mr. Blanco?
Thanks for the question. What I would recommend, given budget deliberation meetings are scheduled for next week, is table them till then. And then for capital specific, although the discussion to be had is we bring that as part of the April adjustment. So we always do a budget adjustment in April. So this additional capital ask could be incorporated there.
Okay, so recognizing the budget's coming up is just operations, and I mean, $7,500 to cover would be folded into that, but your recommendation is not to address it tonight, bring it up at the capital adjustment in April. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm gonna write a note, but if I forget, remind me. Thank you. I'm good. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thanks, Bryce.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. Budget next week, be a good place to bring this forward with a monetary spend. But Councillor Tessier has a question, also by Councillor Miller. So Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and Councillor Munkhoff-Swain answered all my questions pretty much, but thanks for the presentation. Just wanted to know as well, maybe this would give us an opportunity to groom other trails if we went the granular route instead of paving all our trails immediately. Maybe we have some paths that just go to nowhere, and at least we could get some gravel down until we have time to pave them, and that way we could groom them, but just a thought. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. Just for a point of clarification, I might have missed it. Councillor Munkhoff-Swain mentioned it, the service levels. Can you tell me again when this would be groomed? It's following all service levels have been already met for snow clearing, and just explain once more what that looks like.
Yep, through the mayor to Councillor Miller. This would fall under the parks realm of my department, so I have roads and parks. So the parks process would be their first point of the day would be they need to make sure the city building entrances sidewalks are complete. Once that's complete, they'll move on to the parking lot. Once the parking lots are complete at all 13 city properties, they'll move on to the outdoor rink maintenance. And once the rink maintenance is complete or nearly complete, where we could free up an extra body, they would then be able to undertake the clearing or the pathway grooming at the dog park site.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to back up Mr. Blanco's question, recommendation is to take this forward to budget next week because it does involve a spend, and I'll have a motion at that time. So any clarifying questions for the presentation? Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McCook. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Bryce, for the presentation. And I'm just in support of it. I wanted to let you know that I was, and let the rest of council know that. And the fact that I just wanted to underline that the comments being made about how it could be used for other trails during the winter, again, made me realize that as a winter city, it's probably a good idea that we're doing this. It's increasing the opportunity for our citizens to actually get out during the winter and enjoy the weather with their pets. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I recognize that option 2 was chosen as there would be, it would minimize the damage. However, do we anticipate if there would be any damage to the trails come spring that we would have to fix?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook. Thank you. That's a great question. With the drum style groomer, we are able to be on top of the snowpack, so we won't damage it, providing we have enough accumulation. So we would not see maintenance happen November 16 if we get November 15 snowfall for the first of the year. But once we get an adequate accumulation, we'd be able to run not only over the top of the pathway without disruption of the underlying landscaping, but we'd also be able to run externally to that pathway, maybe have a little bit of a wider path. We could zigzag through depending on the undulations of the snow. We would see this option as the least amount of disruption to the underlying landscaping that won't take long to recover.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Kat. Councillor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the options report coming back. I guess for me, maybe I'll bring the conversation down or ground it. So, you know, we have a piece of equipment, we buy tracks for it. We buy this plastic drag for behind it that has the potential of only working once or twice a season. When we have a heavy snowfall and we get some snow out there and actually enough snow that it's going to do something, you know, timing is going to be critical. But when we have to do that, this is going to be last on the list to be done. So we're going to haul this machine out there. By then, we're going to have snow walk down from time to time and we'll get a trail and then it'll be good. Then we'll have, you know, potentially a few warm days. Then the whole trail ices up. And then this, you know, and then we start getting some piles on the side the logistics to this, to me, as a guy who has machines, drags stuff around and understands how this all works, this doesn't work. And I don't think it will work. So what I'm happy about is the commitment of getting that gate snow removal done, because I think of all the concerns that I've had out there this year, keeping that gate open and making sure the gate actually swings and people can get in and out is top of mind. And I actually have grave concerns for our site come spring. I'm very concerned with the mess that's going to show up from folks not cleaning up after their pets in this brand new dog park that we have. So for me, I'm not there with this tracks and apparatus at all. I actually don't think it'll work. And I don't know that it's the right equipment to use around in our city. There are other systems that you can use to do trails for plowing and skidding, and there's weight that you would add to them and stuff. So I don't think it's the right tool. It's the right universal tool for that. So anyways, I look forward to the discussion, but the report's in front of us, and now is the time for the opinion on that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Appreciate that. Seeing no further questions from council. Is a member of council willing to move the motion that receive his information, and we'll probably discuss it next week at operating. Councilman Swain. Sam?
Thanks. Did you say you were volunteering to help at the spring? Is that what I heard? No? I'll move that the March 14th, 2023 report, options for snow removal at the West Recreation Site Dog Park, be received for information.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Council, would you please vote on the motion before you to accept the report as information? That's been voted on unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Bryce, for coming in. And just before you head out, I understand that you were heavily involved this year in our snow removal. Well, this past part of the winter months, and we've got a lot of really good comments. So thank you to your crew and your leadership in that area. It was a very good year for snow removal. We're not quite done yet, but we're on the downslide. So much appreciated for your efforts of you and your department. Thank you very much. All right, moving on with our agenda this evening. We are now into 6F. City of Edmonton request for letter of support for provincial assistance for social issues. Mr. Darget, I believe you'll be presenting. And before you begin, Mr. Darget, I just want to let council know, other mayors I've spoken to in the last couple of days simply sent a letter of support on their own. I felt this topic of information from Mayor Sohi had touched many topics. I wanted the council a chance to look at it. And that's why we brought it to council. So Mr. Darget, doesn't take much of your thunder away, I hope. I want to get an idea how I chose to do it this way as opposed to other municipalities. So Mr. Darget, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, as Mayor has indicated, has been provided with a letter that was received from the City of Edmonton Mayor Sohi that requested a letter of support in advance of a March 7th meeting the Mayor Sohi had scheduled with Premier Smith. The request was to provide support in advocating for provincial assistance to address housing and homelessness, drug poisoning, and public safety in Edmonton's downtown and Chinatown. Should council feel that this request aligns with Beaumont's strategic goals and/or the Edmonton metropolitan region, they may approve the provision of a letter of support to the City of Edmonton. Administration would then prepare an appropriate response following council's decision for the mayor's signature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darget. Questions from council on the letter or the request to provide a letter of support, or Ms. Darget on proceeding accordingly? Sam, you have a question? Or Councilman Swain? Sam?
Yeah, just more of a comment. So obviously, support the need for this conversation. The one thing I'd just like a little twist on, or test council's temperature here. A lot of the focus, and I understand why, rightly so, Edmonton's downtown and Chinatown. But for me, I'd prefer more broader language, just kind of around Edmonton itself. That's much closer to our borders and impact us. And so, those challenges are predominantly downtown. But I think a letter from yourself should look at the safety for all of Edmonton and not just those areas. So I'll just leave it there just for consideration. But generally, I do appreciate you bringing this forward and not just signing it and sending it off. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I thought that was the best way to proceed. I appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, comments?
Yeah, for me, the first thing I thought about was something similar to what Councillor Swain said, but I do like his suggestion. But I think the potential impact to our residents, alongside of everything that, you know, affects the city downtown and definitely needs some help addressing it and some advocacy like Mayor Sohi is pushing forward. But, transit and transit related security issues are top of mind for all of the community. They pop up in the news very often, and that has a very high probability in the future of directly affecting Beaumont residents as well. So, you know, I'm happy to support a letter, to advocate here. But, you know, if I was rating it, I would also put something in there about transit. So maybe all of Edmonton, like maybe that covers that. But, that's kind of my suggestion as well. So, we are going to be, touching the city and getting transit organized someday, somehow. So it's in everyone's best interest to get that cleaned up. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Miller, Ashley?
Yeah, I agree with both councillors on their thoughts. I find it kind of odd to just recognize those two areas and go with it. I'd be interested to know if other municipalities added to their letter, in those ways with areas that specifically affect them. And in that instance, if we are able to kind of add to that letter, or if it's a yes or no sort of thing. So I'd be curious to know.
Let me try and help you with that as best I can. The mayors I spoke to, I didn't ask to see a copy of their letter. They basically gave me the comments that they felt they could simply offer a letter of support, that these issues are important in Edmonton and the region in general. So they felt the letter of support was simply a matter of due course rather than going to council for review. So trying to help you answer your question. I'm not sure what they said in their letters, but no one said they did anything different in terms of saying, well, yes, support, but please, another issue is this. No one did that to my knowledge.
Okay.
It'd be more of a general letter of support suggesting that we as a council support Edmonton's efforts to advocate on these issues with provincial government.
Okay, so it sounds like, they kind of went ahead, like you said, supporting Edmonton, but not focusing solely on their municipality and what works for them. So I'm just trying to think, are we getting too heavy into it by you bringing this forward? Thank you for doing so, but maybe it just stops there with we support them or we don't. Are we to get that far when it comes to Beaumont? I'm not sure, but I like the comments from both councillors.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor, and definitely supportive of this issue being brought forward as an advocacy issue for one of our regional partners and big one. What happens in Edmonton really does affect us all, and what happens here affects Edmonton. So I think we're all definitely been working together as collaborators for a number of years now, more successfully. And I think if we keep it simple at this point and not get too far into all of the other issues that are out there, I think it would be better. I think responding and being positive about the fact that we support Edmonton in its advocacy needs to be treated equitably in the province. I think we could go down a rabbit hole if we went too far with a whole lot of other things. So I think keeping this letter and this response simple would be the way to go, but I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And just for council information, Elizabeth Holmes, since I became mayor and participating in the EMRB, I made it very clear that I believe a strong Edmonton is good for Beaumont, and a strong Beaumont is good for Edmonton and Spruce Grove and so on down the line. We're strong as a region, and our regional partner has some issues that we don't have in Beaumont based on the letter he's given, but those issues might come to Beaumont in the future. So if we can nip in the bud in Edmonton before they become issues elsewhere, it's good for everybody in the region. So the letter will be a letter of support based on what he's advocating. Now he has, as the letter mentioned, he did meet with the Premier already, but a letter of support at a later time was welcome to them. That's why we're bringing it to council now. So appreciate that. Is seeing no further comments or questions, and is member of council willing to move the recommendation to offer a letter of support? Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
I'd be pleased to make that motion, Mayor. That administration prepare a letter to the City of Edmonton indicating the City of Beaumont support in advocating for the items as outlined in Mayor Sohi's letter dated March 3rd, 2023, and that the mayor on behalf of council sign the letter of support.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion from council members of council. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion before you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda this evening, I believe we're now into Item 7, councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. I believe there's one I printed previously regarding the traffic safety reserve and pedestrian safety enhancements. Information I received was sufficient, and I may have a subsequent motion down the road, but for right now it's sufficient. So, Mr. Lebecki, I thank you for that information from yourself. Are there any councillor inquiries this evening? Oh, Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just working on a councillor inquiry with Councillor Monkoff Swain.
Okay,
We're good?
we'll give it a minute or two to get that drafted up. Okay, no problem. Is there anybody else with inquiries? I didn't catch that, sorry. Oh, you want to speak to yourself? Oh, it's there now. Okay, thank you. Councilor Monkoff Swain, you have the floor. Sam.
Thank you. So the inquiry is please provide information and update on the status and next steps for Township Road 510, and additionally add any information on where Leduc County is with their study plans for Township Road 510. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A good inquiry after the budget update there. Any further councillor inquiries? Councillor Barnhart, something popped in, did it?
Yes, sorry, Mayor. It's not an inquiry, it's just an announcement. I'd like to let the rest of council and the public know that the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation was successful in getting a provincial grant for the Gates Landing project, affordable housing, 24 units. Now we go to the feds. So it's up to the federal government now, whether they come in with the other $6 million to make this happen. But just wanted to report on that because I know council was very supportive of that project.
Fantastic. That's great news for Regional Housing Foundation that we're part of, and you're our lead on that, Councillor Barnhart. Much appreciated for your leadership there. You're currently the chair, are you not, of that foundation? So on Beaumont's behalf, much appreciated. Great announcement for us here this evening. Any further councillor inquiries or sponsor reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, our CAO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Council. Mayor Donalock, I got a number of items here. I'll try and speak really, really fast. This is one of our favorite times of year. I know Council's favorite time of year, and that's when the assessment surveys go out. So they're going to be mailed beginning March 20th. Our contracted assessor this year's Accurate Assessment Group. So they send surveys out to about 20% of the property owners each year on a 5-year rotating cycle, and it inevitably confuses the heck out of all of them. And so you 7 should be hearing from 20% of our landowners shortly. But the survey is done to help ensure the property is assessed fairly and across the city for the municipal property taxes. In addition to the letters, there'll be public notification on social media, the website, and local newspaper. We're trying every year to provide as much information in a way that's easily understood, because it is a difficult topic. It's a confusing topic. So thank you, Finance, for that. He's laughing over here. Community and Social Development, FTSS is delivering the volunteer income tax program. Program is for low income residents who require assistance completing and filing for their 2020 income tax returns. Residents wanting more information can reach out to Dinah Melgard at FCSS. The Community Circle Thrift Center is currently recruiting 1 full-time and 1 part-time store associate. As soon as the staff has been secured, the store can open. They're hoping to have a soft opening by the end of March. And I know you had some update information on that as well, Mayor Donalock. Website's currently being created to provide more information on how to volunteer and donate. So that's pretty exciting for our community. I know council made a decision earlier in the year to provide some startup funding for them. Legal and Ledge Services, the open house for the pilot project of alcohol at Four Seasons happens this week. It's happening on March 16th and 18th. I got it wrong on it in my first report, but I'm going to fix it. There's also contacts on social media. That's the looking for public input into the pilot project. Infrastructure, Don Sparrow skating surface will close tomorrow. For obvious reasons, spring is around the corner. Outdoor rinks will remain open this week, but likely March 18th to 19th will be the last weekend before they close for the season as well. Pothole repair season is right around the corner, and our roads team will begin the repair program when the roads are, they need to be completely clear, and it needs to be a certain temperature. And of course, Bryce knows all that stuff, so I'm hoping I don't screw this up, but feel free to correct me. From water this week, workers are entering manholes on 30th Ave and Soleil Boulevard near Champs-Valley School. They're installing equipment to reduce the possibility of odors from nearby storm ponds during the spring thaw. And can be a common occurrence and has been in our city, and we're trying to improve that. Transit, we're working on that reduced transit schedule options in preparation for public consultation. I think I have a picture. Did you have a chance to load any of those pictures on the next one? And I know council was aware of this one. The aerial apparatus has arrived in Beaumont and expected to be in service in 3 to 4 weeks. I wanted to show the picture just to show Councillor Tessier that it actually fits in the hall. So we were lucky. Nobody measured to begin with. I'm kidding. But pretty slick apparatus, and we'll do a ribbon cutting. I had to get that one in. We'll do a ribbon cutting that'll include council here very shortly. Recreation. So we had 7,500 people signed up for the community registration early access. That's a crazy number. Program registration days run March 20th to the 22nd. Aquatics has had nearly 2,000 aquatic program participants in January and February, so that facility is being used. We had more than 45,000 check-ins at the BSRC during the month of January and February, so that's incredible. I happen to go there fairly frequently, and the place is packed all the time. It's so cool. The first intake for community grant funding is April 1st, 2023. Information can be found on our website, which is, it'll be attached on this update as well. So that's what I had for an update. Thank you very much. If there's any questions.
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. So just to be sure, that is our fire truck in our fire hall, right?
I already started that, so I'm going to let you finish it.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments on social media that I think Councilor Tessie got a phone call. The people were saying that we bought a fire truck, it won't fit in our fire hall. And I don't know how that got on social media, but I'm pretty sure we got one that would actually fit our building. So anyhow, it's kind of a funny thing on social media. So gotta love social media in Beaumont. Just saying. Any questions for CEO Schwartz in his report this evening? Seeing none, thank you, CEO Schwartz. Appreciate that. Next item is the notices of motion. I noticed a motion from members of council this evening. I'm not aware of any, but many of some have come the last little while before we began our meeting. Seeing none, awesome. Before we begin our closed session, I just want to say one thing that I want to thank Enbridge for their Safe Community First Responder program that donated, I believe it's $7,500 for our fire department to upgrade our communication stuff, which is very, very huge grant, and we're much appreciative of that. And it was put on social media that we had grant secured, and just want to thank Enbridge for that, because I believe they helped various first responders around the province with various pieces of equipment, and our guys and girls got some stuff coming to them for communication works. That's great. Thank you, Enbridge. Much appreciated for that. And with that, our next item is a closed session. So with that, I'll ask member of council to move into closed session, and we should be a few minutes in that, and then we'll come out afterwards and finish off our meeting. Member of council willing to move that motion? Councillor Steve?
Yeah, I'll move that council move into closed session pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, section 16 and 25 at 7:02 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, council, please vote on the motion to move into camera. Carried unanimously. Thank you.